All right, everyone, welcome. We have a really cool conversation for you today. There is a best-selling book that you may have heard of, and the title of the book explains everything we're going to talk about today. And the title is "Why Am I Still Fat?" And that title is so important because everyone gets stuck. I'm doing everything right: calories, treadmill, the typical suspects of I need to run and I need to eat less, but I can't figure this problem out. Why am I still stuck? So we brought the author here for you today to dive deep into that. Thank you for being here. First of all, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Kashif. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great conversation because this problem touches everybody at some point in their life. There's a tire to grab and say, like, where did this come from? Right.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
for some people, it's obviously a little more extreme than that, but this getting stuck part is such a consistent theme for everybody dealing with their weight and their fat to muscle proportion,
Yeah,
right?
you're right. I mean, and we're told this oversimplistic view of weight loss that it's just calories in, calories out, just exercise more and eat less and you'll lose weight, super simple. And
Yeah.
then people do that and it doesn't work. And actually, oftentimes that approach backfires and they gain weight. And then they come to me and they're like, the title of my book, they're like, why am I
Yeah.
still fat? I'm doing all of the right things and I'm not only not losing weight, now I'm gaining weight and it's getting harder and harder to even lose any at all. So that's the situation a lot of people find themselves in.
So they come to you and it's like calorie in, calorie out fitness. So where are they getting unstuck? What are those things that you're resolving? And what is it one particular method or is there a bunch of stuff?
There's a bunch of stuff. So, yeah, the subtitle is The Hidden Keys to Unlocking That Stubborn Weight Loss because there's several different things. And what I've seen I've been practicing as a registered dietitian for almost 16 years now. And there's a lot of things that are common. They're not like normal to have off balance, but they're common in the people that get stuck with their weight loss. And really, I think it's important to take a holistic approach addressing your body, all the different systems of your body and really getting to the root instead of just telling someone to just count calories and, burn more calories than you're taking in because that's not really addressing all your body's systems. So the biggest ones that I see are, I mean, there's a lot. There's underactive thyroid, there's hormonal imbalance, there's food sensitivities that are sneaky that people don't realize they have. And a couple of the biggest, I would say like the top two sneaky weight loss blockers are inflammation and toxic overload. And I
Yeah.
specifically mentioned those two because not only are they so prevalent and almost everyone is battling with these, but they're also not really talked about. Like people might,
Yeah.
know that maybe they should go check their thyroid because they might have heard that thyroid's the master of their metabolism. So they go get, those tests done. Or a lot of women will say, well, I know that my hormones are changing. I'm getting older. So they'll check their hormones. But not a lot of people are thinking, oh my gosh, I better see if I need to detox from, toxic overload, or gosh, I wonder if I have inflammation accumulating in my body that I need to heal in order to lose weight and keep it off.
The inflammation piece is interesting because that word is tied to chronic disease.
Hmm.
It's like most of our top killers are rooted in inflammation.
Right.
And I think it's completely outside of people's awareness how this leads to what we think of as a lifestyle problem, not a disease problem. Although obesity is a diagnosable condition. So what's the connection there? Why does inflammation equal weight gain?
Yeah, it's really sneaky. It's like one of those sneaky silent ones that can really sabotage weight loss progress. And I think this is like a big cause of, belly fat and weight gain and a lot of other things, like you said, chronic disease and sugar cravings and low energy. But the way that it ties into weight loss is so, with inflammation, it's sneaky because you can't see it and you can't feel it. Unless, we're talking about like acute inflammation, that type where you stub your toe, you get a paper cut, like you can see that, you can see the redness and the swelling. And that's like a good thing. But the chronic type is the problem. And that's the kind that's really festering deep inside of you, that's slowly growing and causing a ton of damage. And your body views that as like an emergency fire. So when you have
Mm,
inflammation, and we can talk about the causes of it too, but when you have inflammation accumulating inside of you, your body is going to allocate all of its energy towards putting that fire out. And until that's
yeah.
taken care of, your body's not going to be having energy that it's putting towards burning fat or making you feel awesome and energetic and healthy, it's going to focus on your body's main priority is keeping you alive. So if there's like a fire inside your body, that's the top priority. So it's tricky because a lot of times people don't really know they have, and some people know they have it. Some people are like, I can feel it in my joints and my back, but I don't really know what to do about it. But for a lot of people, they're like, I mean, I don't think I have inflammation. Why would I have it? But the thing is, if you've never really done anything to address inflammation in your body, it's probably there.
Yeah. And so, how do you know? Because you're right. In today's reality, with what we breathe and what we eat and our stress and our sleep, well, you're probably inflamed. Is
Yeah.
there testing? What are the cues?
Yeah, you can get testing done. I mean, you can get like C-reactive protein done and see if you have inflammation in your body. I would say like biggest clues are stubborn weight loss, or if you're gaining weight for kind of unexplainable reasons. If you are feeling fatigued a lot, low
Mm.
energy, just not like a lot of people will say, I just don't feel like the vibrant self that I know that I am, that I used to be. I'm just feeling sluggish lately. Brain fog is another one. But not being able to lose weight, that's like the biggest thing that I see in people. And it's typically when I talk to them about inflammation, they're like, yeah, that's never really anything that I thought to address.
So, what's the trigger there? Because so going back one step, when you said that you use the term burn fat, right?
Mhm.
So, are we actually burning fat as fuel, or is it some people say the cell shrinks in size, but it's still there? And then what is the connection between that and like why does inflammation equal weight gain or fat retention?
Well, it goes even deeper. So, with inflammation, the real root cause that's often overlooked is something that a lot of people probably never really heard of and really needs to be addressed. When we talk about really getting to the root and healing from the inside out, there's this stress protein in the body that's released when your body is faced with physical and mental danger, and it's called galectin 3. So, it's a
Mm,
survival protein. It's something that our body produces. It's part of our immune system. It's an immune response. When we have like an injury, for instance, your galectin 3 will go up and it'll actually drive the inflammatory process, which is a good thing because that's like how we heal. And it's really so closely tied to our body's survival response that researchers have actually called it the survival paradox protein because it's like this life saving protein, but it's really intended to turn off when an emergency is over. The
mm,
problem is that that's not really happening in this day and age. Like our galectin 3 activity has really
yeah.
gone haywire because we live in a very different world than our ancestors. We're filled with chronic physical and mental stress. And like you said, repeated exposure to health damaging toxins. And it really leaves our survival, response constantly primed for attack. And there's a couple, when I talk about like, stress in our world today, I talk about galectin 3. And then another one people have probably heard of is cortisol, your stress hormone. That's another thing that can, get increased when we're repeatedly exposed to stress day in and day out. So both of those can lead to weight gain. So we can come back to cortisol in a second, but with galectin 3, what happens is even though it's trying to help us, it can actually harm us because it constantly drives that inflammatory process. So
Mm,
basically, it's a healing molecule gone rogue because we're faced with so much stress and so many
yeah.
toxins. So it goes out of control, and too much galectin 3 is going to cause out of control inflammation. And then that's going to interfere with metabolic function and your body's ability to lose weight and burn fat. And a lot of therapies, will address inflammation, but if they're not getting to the root, which is galectin 3, it's kind of like the pilot light that's like driving the inflammation, and it kind of works upstream driving that inflammatory response. So we can focus on healing inflammation, but if we're not addressing what's actually causing the inflammation, then we're not really getting to the root of the issue. So that's like one part of it. And then the cortisol part, people might know cortisol is like your stress hormone. It's what's responsible for you see people like lifting cars off of like their family member that was like under a car. Or you see people that are like able to like outrun a bear or a tiger, and that's because when your body's under stress, cortisol can actually spike your blood pressure and spike your blood sugars and help you do crazy things. But when
Mm.
we're exposed to increased levels of cortisol every day, that can also cause your body to have inflammation and gain weight. So it's like kind of, all these systems that are going out of balance can really pack on inflammation, and that can pack on pounds.
Yeah, and this is you're painting a picture of how it goes so far beyond what we said, calories and exercise, because it's our current reality that we're in today is not aligned for the systems and coping mechanisms that we innately have built in. And so we're
Yeah.
triggering stuff that was never meant to be triggered. And so you have this epidemic of weight gain that's not just food, right? It's so much more.
It's
So
so
where do you
much more.
start with it? Yeah.
Where do we start? Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, looking at all the different symptoms someone has. So another really common symptom is cravings. People will
Mm,
say, I have cravings for carbohydrates and sugar. And a couple of reasons for that. I mean, when our cortisol levels go up, that spikes your blood sugar levels. And that's actually independent of anything that you're eating. So, like you said, this is why it goes so much further beyond calories in, calories out, because when someone is stressed, oftentimes they're also stress eating, but let's just say
mm.
they're not. Even if they're not, cortisol is actually going to spike your blood sugars and that causes them to crash. And that's when you can actually crave. So there's like so many different factors involved. So it's really about, taking a step back, and we want to get the body in balance. So as a registered dietitian, of course, like I look at the food that they're eating, and I really want to make sure their blood sugars are stable, because when your blood sugars are stable, that's when you can actually release the hormone called glucagon, which burns fat for energy. And then
Mm.
also that's going to help to, you know, burn fat for energy. So it's going to help you lose weight, but it's also going to help reduce inflammation when you're eating healthy fats. So I always tell people with the food part, and there's a lot of different parts we look at, but if we're just starting with food, we're going to start with protein, fat, and carbohydrates in balance. So I call it PFC. So the standard American diet is pretty high in carbohydrates, and carbs aren't totally bad in and of themselves. It's okay to have some, but we want to balance those out with protein and fat, because that's going to help to protein can actually increase our metabolism up to 35% for the following 2 to 3 hours after we eat it. So we want
Mm.
protein throughout the day. And then healthy fat is so important for so many things, including slowing down the absorption and assimilation of the carbohydrates, which turn into sugar in our body. All carbs turn into sugar. So it's like getting that balance of PFC, protein, fat, and carbs. That's going to help. It's going to help start a person off with like the right foundation, really being able to think more clearly and feel balanced and set their body up for success kind of from the get go.
I know that we're talking about hacks outside of food, but you just laid out, well, here's what your food should look like. And then you spoke about cravings. This is where we find people get stuck, is that their environment, okay, I sat with you and I figured things out. Now I'm gonna go home and I still had Netflix in my pantry at night. So how do you actually get those habits to kick in, because it's so difficult to make changes and the cravings are there. How do you make it easy?
Yeah. Well, I think that, really getting someone with a plan where they can eat every few hours throughout the day. So, and especially for women, it seems like when we get them kind of in like a consistent eating regimen, where instead of intermittent fasting, or instead of just trying to, use willpower and not have any sugar, like really getting them to the point where they're keeping their blood sugar stable by eating throughout the day, like every few hours. That's like a really good starting point. But also support and accountability, because I really don't think we're meant to go through this life all on our own. And when
Yeah.
people are just trying to do it by themselves, they get uninspired, they get stuck. Like it's important to have someone that they can ask for help. I mean, even like, research always shows that when people have like a gym buddy, they go to the gym more frequently and they do better and they see better results. So I think, getting the support, but then, having a specific personalized plan and getting support at the same time is really important.
Yeah, for sure. Accountability is any change you're trying to make. It's not prescription and get your pill and go home. It's
Mhm.
it's work. It's work, and it's weeks, sometimes months of work, and it's even you don't picture on day one how this may be a 3, 4, 5 month journey, and you might forget in a few weeks. Something else is going to come up, and you're like your priorities are going to change. So that accountability helps. So let's jump into the toxin side of things, because this is an area that people completely outside of their awareness. What does this have to do with fat? I can understand disease. I can understand whatever. Like, why are these two things being put together? And I know this is a big part of your work, a big part of your book.
Yeah.
So, what's the
Yeah.
story there?
Well, because they're stored in your fat cells. So
Right.
toxins, will accumulate in your fat cells and they can stay lodged there for years. And it can be a vicious cycle, because if you're tired, which oftentimes you are, if you've got inflammation going on, again, your body's healing that inflammation. It's not giving you energy. So your energy is going into healing inflammation. If you're tired, your body is going to tap into your fat cells to grab energy. And then it also grabs more toxins. And that can actually
Mm,
make you more tired. And it's like this vicious cycle. So, and then also the toxins can fuel inflammation. And it can fuel a lot of other
Mhm.
stuff. It can wreak havoc on hormones and organ damage, and it can mutate DNA and cause damage to your immune systems. There's a lot of problems with having toxins just stored up in our body. So, really, the more we can lessen our toxic burden on the body, the better. And that was kind of actually one of the next steps I was going to kind of go into because, yes, like the food is important. And I never want to downplay food because I'm a registered dietitian and I see the power of food and nutrients every day. And the reality is, like you said, we're continually being bombarded with toxins in our food, in our hair products and cleaning materials, in the air we breathe. And those get absorbed and they accumulate in our body. And anytime we have toxins built up, just like anytime we have inflammation accumulated, your body is going to have to focus its energy and resources on eliminating toxins, which is going to block your body's ability to lose weight. And it's really going to also wreak havoc on your energy and your brain power and your immunity and your skin and just how you overall feel as a human being. So we kind of go back to all of the things that we're doing in our life. And also another thing too is small changes, they add up over time. So sometimes
Mhm.
people just feel so overwhelmed because it's like, okay, I've got inflammation, and I've got toxic buildup, and like I don't know if I'm going to be able to do all of this. I can't change my whole lifestyle. I'm a busy person, and I hear a lot of the reasons why people get stuck with getting started. But the reality is, you can just start with like a few things, and even just a few things can be really, really powerful over time. And then from there, you habit stack and you add extra things on as you go. It's not like you have to change everything at once. Some people do, but I
Mm.
think the biggest thing is doing something that you're actually going to do and being honest with yourself. Like, what are a couple action steps we can take right now instead of feeling like you have to overhaul everything all at once, because that can just be a way to keep you stuck, and we want to move people forward.
Yeah, and that doing one or two things well
Mhm.
kind of creates a momentum to propel you forward because once you start getting the reward of that thing working, it's very
Mhm.
hard for your other nasty habits to stick around. You know,
Yeah.
you fix one thing, you're not gonna go back to the other thing that's broken, and then it you get to
Yeah.
this point where the catalyst kicks in and everything starts to change rather than you trying to change everything on day one. Heavy, heavy burden, people fall flat, doesn't often work out. So, yeah, start with the low-hanging fruit, fix it, and keep going, and the other stuff kind of gets pulled into the wave of momentum and just happens. It's really awesome.
Well, and that's good too, because especially when when we talk about detox, Herxheimer reactions can happen. And what that basically is, it occurs, it's like toxic byproducts that are dislodged from tissues and they can cause reactions in our body. And it doesn't sound fun, and it's not, but that can actually happen when people will detox too quickly. And and it makes sense because people get excited. They're like, okay, I have all these toxins, let's just get them all out. But if we
Yeah.
do it too fast and they're in our body, we start to feel symptoms, and we don't want people to feel that way because they can feel flu-like symptoms, they can get headaches, you can get skin rashes, and it can cause more inflammation and joint pain. And that's just if you go too quickly. And it does, it's not like a forever thing, it's temporary. But we don't want people to feel horrible as a result of like
Yeah.
making healthy changes. So when I talk about detox, I always say go low and go slow. And and because we don't want you to react as you're clearing things out. So even just doing like adding in, for instance, like an infrared sauna, they're so great
Mm.
for detoxing. And I think I have one in my office. I think they're relaxing and like they're just a great tool that, and this is like one of the ones that there's some that are quicker and don't take a lot of time. This one might take a little more time, but I tell people just start with like 10 or 15 minutes in an infrared sauna. You don't have to be in there for an hour or two. And it's actually probably better if you don't, because again, we want to go low and slow. So lower
Mhm.
heat, lower time. Infrared saunas heat your body directly from the inside out. So it gives you like this deeper penetration than a regular sauna. And your body goes through an entire anti inflammatory detoxification process when you're in an infrared sauna. So I think even, that is something that, you're not having to eat or take or do too differently. It's just adding something in that can really make a big difference on your, energy, your weight, your skin, and how you feel overall.
So how much have you looked into, um, the gut being a priority in terms of what's going on in the microbiome, what's going on in gut health in general, dysbiotic state, and how that may lead to fat retention?
Yeah, it's a big deal because basically your metabolism starts in your gut. And
Mm.
a lot of people have, really poor gut health. for a lot of reasons, overconsumption of sugar and dieting and taking a lot of antibiotics over the years, and just all the toxins that we're exposed to can wreak havoc on our gut. So gut health is another area that it's a great starting point for people, since metabolism starts in your gut.
So with all, I mean, we've talked about so much already, and we're only partway through.
I
It's,
know.
kind of feels to me like, wow, there's so much going. So weight loss is already overwhelming. We're already
Yep.
feeling stuck.
Yes.
How does somebody know their individual starting point?
I mean, I think it's important to get individualized help, right? Because it's a little hard to
Uh,
be super generic when, even like I said at the beginning, like, there's hormone, if someone's got really imbalanced hormones, or they have like a thyroid that's working really, really slow, we're probably going to start there. But if they have
mhm,
symptoms like, diarrhea or constipation or bloating or gas or sugar cravings, I'm probably going to take a look at their gut. But if they're someone who, has been exposed, if they have Lyme disease or they've been exposed to parasites, or like if there's a really obvious reason that for sure they have inflammation and toxic buildup because of that, then we're going to start there. So um, it is individualized, and if someone has no idea, I think doing any of these things is better than nothing. And it also is going to depend on their routine and their lifestyle. Like, some people don't have the means to buy a sauna and put it in their office like I did, and they might not have one anywhere nearby. So that idea might be out. Or someone else, might be really, really willing to take supplements. I have some women that are like, I will take all of the supplements, which is
yeah.
awesome because supplements are target nutrients and you can make a huge difference taking supplements. And other people are like, I can maybe do a few supplements a day and that's it. And so then we're going to prioritize, the few a day for them specifically. So I mean, it is individualized. And that said, there are things that everybody can do. The things that we're talking about, all the things we've mentioned already, if anybody added these in, it's going to make them healthier.
Mm. So I know you brought up hormones a few times here, and just because I know who's listening, there's these phases, right? There's like, I'm young, I'm going through puberty, I'm thinking about my body. There's like fertility, I'm mature, and then there's menopause if we're thinking about the female context. So all of what you're saying, when you get to that sort of peri and menopausal state, do things change? Are there different things you're looking for? Is it all the same? Are the signals different? Problems different?
The problems are going to be different. I mean, like an obvious one, right, would be women are probably going to start, they're not going to be experiencing like hot flashes, for example, until they're probably not going to experiencing that in their teens or in their 20s, but that might be something that comes a little bit later. Um, what I always tell people is that just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal. So,
Mhm.
when women come to me and they're feeling a lot of the symptoms that are associated with menopause, and they're told it's just, and weight gain being one of them. And they're told it's just normal. This is just something that has to happen. Like, oh, I'm aging. So my doctor said, no wonder I'm gaining weight because my hormones are just off. And it's just because I'm getting older. That doesn't have to be the case. So, like, yes, we do have some things that are working against us, but there's a lot that we can do. And so, I mean, even all of the things we're talking about today, clearing toxins out, that's going to be so beneficial for your hormonal health. Um,
Mhm.
Reducing inflammation is going to be helpful. Eating protein, fat, and carbs and doing that throughout the day, keeping your blood sugars balanced, that has a huge impact on hormones. Things like avoiding soy. I mean, soy can absolutely interfere with healthy hormone production. And so, it's not, I'm a big fan of, not putting people on, medications and pills and things like that if they don't have to be, and really addressing the root of it. And a lot of times we're told that things just have to be the way that they are just because that's, common in society. And that's just not true. So I think it can be exciting when we do have symptoms, because we can look at, okay, well, here's what we want to change. Here's what's happening right now. And then we can actually see progress over time. Because a lot of women, a lot of times they come in, it is about weight. Like, a lot of times when they come to see me, it's because they want to lose weight. Sometimes it's 5 pounds or 10 pounds. It's not necessarily 50 or 100 pounds. Sometimes it's just the
Yeah.
5 or 10 pounds that they're really, really stuck with. And it's having a huge impact on their confidence and how they feel, and their energy. And, they know that, like, they would feel a lot better without that 5 or 10 pounds. And then as we get into it, oftentimes I'll see things resolve that Sometimes they don't even mention at the beginning, they'll say, "Gosh, I didn't realize I had all this joint pain, but it's crazy. It's gone. Like I've struggled with this for years. And I just thought I didn't even think to mention it because it's something that I thought I would just have to live with." So it's kind of amazing how we can isolate so many of these things. And I think there's a time and a place for that. And your body has all these different systems that work together. And oftentimes, if you just start somewhere and you start addressing one or two or maybe three things, they'll
Mm.
improve your other systems because everything is working together. And that's the holistic approach versus making someone go see, a doctor for their gut health and then a doctor for their hormones and then a rheumatologist and, like kind of making them run all over. It's like, what if we just address the body as a whole and watch everything come into balance? And there are, like I said, there are times when you start with priorities and say, okay, you have this going on, let's start here. And at the same time, you don't have to always go in a perfect order. Really just
Mhm.
starting anywhere is going to benefit the rest of your systems, and then you can build up that momentum and add in more and habit stack like we talked about earlier. So I always tell people, don't get discouraged just because there's so many different areas to address. Just starting somewhere is going to give you positive momentum. You're going to start feeling better, you're going to start seeing results, and then we can kind of keep going and adding in other areas.
So you use the word pills.
Mhm.
I want to ask you, how many of your patients come to you and say, you know what, I could take a shortcut and just go get some Ozempic? And what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. Honestly, not many of mine come to me saying that because when they're when they're coming to me, they kind of feel like they've tried all of those quick fixes and they're over it, and they actually use the term, which is not a sexy term to use, but they use the term lifestyle change. They're like,
Right.
"I've tried all these things that are quick fixes, worked for a little while," and usually by the time they come to me, the things that kinda used to be like their go-to quick fixes don't work anymore. Like, a lot of them will have
Mhm.
just, like, strategies they pull out of the bag, things that they would just do, maybe quick diets and things like that, but at this point, those aren't working any longer, and they feel like they don't know their body anymore. Things that used to work aren't working, and they're truly stuck. They're like, "I have no idea what's going on in my body
Mm.
and why I can't figure it out." And so I would like to think that a lot of my clients wouldn't take something like that because they're just like over all of those, highly marketed quicker fixes. And they know that there's more to it. They know that there's more to their body and they know that they're missing something.
Yeah, what you're saying makes sense in terms of something used to work and it doesn't anymore,
Mhm.
because that quick fix is addressing the symptom of the fat, but you're fueling the fire with, say, some inflammatory root cause. That thing unaddressed is going to progress, and it's
Yes.
going to be more and more challenging over time. And eventually, you'll get to the point where the thing that you were able to chip away at, you can't anymore because the fires become so big, and
Yes.
ultimately, and that's where people get stuck, like you said.
Exactly, and you're so right, and that's what people will say. They'll say, "I don't understand. I eat clean, I exercise." They'll say, "It's not like I'm eating tubs of Ben& and Jerry's or, every night, or it's not like I'm eating greasy foods." And, they'll say, "I eat better than most of my friends," like, and it doesn't make sense to them. But you're right, what happens is when it's not addressed, that builds up over time, and if
Mhm.
we're not getting to the root cause, you can and for a while, you can restrict, and
Yeah.
dieting, short-term dieting can work. You can lose weight. The problem is my clients that come to see me, they want to keep it off. They're sick of losing the same 5 or 10 pounds and
Yeah.
then gaining it back and oftentimes gaining more because ultimately what's happening is your body doesn't trust you because now you just restricted and you start eating again because you have to stay alive. So then once you eat again, your body is like, okay, she's eating again. I'm going to hang on to everything that she's giving me in case she starves me again. And so your body will then pack on more pounds and it slows down your metabolism over time. And that's why when people are used to the shorter term dieting and they end up kind of getting into that cycle of, okay, they're dieting and now they stop, because they can't do it any longer. Then they gain more weight. And now they're trying to lose not just the 10 that they originally had to lose. Now they've got an extra 5 or 10 on. And then you can see how like that just snow piles over time. And
Mm.
eventually you're, 25, 30 pounds heavier than where you started, and the dieting's obviously making things worse. So we've got to get to like the underlying root causes, and really inflammation and clearing out toxins. Those are like the first two places that I start with almost everyone, even
Mm.
if they have other things going on. And we'll do, we can do some gut stuff along with it. We can do, we can be checking their hormones along with it. But I really think like if you're still going to have inflammation at the root, and if you still have an overload of toxins, you think with toxin overload, I kind of think of it as like a cup, and your cup starts to fill up over time, and your
Mhm.
body can clear it out. Like your body's meant to like clear out toxins, so the cup's not getting completely full, but over years and years and more toxin exposure and more toxin exposure,
Mhm.
eventually it overflows. And when it overflows is a lot of times when people start to feel a lot worse and they're like, I have to do something. Or that's when a lot of weight packs on and they're like, I don't know why. I didn't change anything with my eating. I mean, why would I all of a sudden be gaining weight? And that's because all of that piled up over time and you didn't do anything. So at that point, it's like, okay, now we have to help your body because,
Yeah.
like we were talking about, we're not in the olden days where things were a lot different. We're exposed to a lot more chemicals and a lot more toxins now. So even though your body can clear out toxins, if we support it in that process, we're going to see progress a lot quicker. And sometimes it's hard to keep up with. If we're not doing anything to clear out toxins, every day we're getting exposed. And you think about a few decades of getting or more of getting exposed to
Mm.
toxins, that's where we eventually get into that overflowing of the cup. And that's where a lot of the problems happen.
If you want to keep diving deeper with your prescription for life with the Unpill podcast, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. I've also written my first book, The DNA Way: Unlock the Secrets of Your Genes to Reverse Disease, Slow Aging, and Achieve Optimal Wellness. Take a look and enjoy, guys.
I see that, when we're dealing with people, like, okay, they're listening to you, and they hear,
Mhm.
okay, here's all these potential solutions that I haven't thought about before. Then the actual symptom they come in is different, and I'm wondering if that points to the problems. Meaning, some people are like, I just store fat on my belly. Some people are like, well, head to toe, I got bigger and smaller and bigger. Some people are like, my face and my like. So, do those things point to some of these problems? Are they connected?
I mean, if a little yes and no, I would say we don't get to choose where we store fat or where chronic inflammation, how it shows up. Like with chronic inflammation, sometimes people have rashes on their skin. Some people's face gets really big and puffy. Some people have joint pain. So those can all point us to like the same thing. It can point us
Mm.
to inflammation. Um, but I wouldn't treat it any differently because
Okay.
even just like when you gain weight, some people gain it in their belly, some people gain it in their butt, some people it's like the first couple pounds you can like see their face get puffy. So yes, our bodies are different and unique in those ways in terms of like we don't really know, we don't get to choose how our body is going to react, and I would still treat it the same.
Yeah. So I know
Yeah.
that because of that body type change, for some people, the signal is a lot stronger. Like you said, the person that can see their face change, it's very fast. We had a
Yeah.
patient that was very fit, like extremely fit, and she was at 40% body fat. And it didn't like we thought it was a mistake, but we realized it was all backside and legs, but she
Mhm.
was fit, so you couldn't see it. So there's some people where the signal isn't quite there in terms of the way they look, but it's the problem is there. So are there things you can do, like on a maintenance level, to check, like as opposed to just looking in the mirror?
It's a good question, and it reminds me of that term. Have you heard of the term skinny fat, where
Yeah.
they've looked at people that are or even like I think thin marathon runners that have died and they're like what happened, and they find out that there's
Yeah.
tons of inflammation going on inside,
Yeah.
but you couldn't see it because everyone's body is
Yeah.
so different. So when it comes to testing, gosh, we're programmed for like in our society for lab tests, and we can test. Like I said, you can test for a lot of things. You can test for inflammation. You can look at CRP, C-reactive protein, which if you have a current infection or an injury or something, it'll be inflamed. It'll be elevated. Ideally, we want our C-reactive protein to be as close to zero as possible because there shouldn't be inflammation going on in your body unless you're actually sick or injured. Um, but I think that, I mean, when my clients come to me, if they have tests, great, we can look at them. We can also just look at the symptoms. And even something like galectin 3, like I talked about earlier, since that's like driving inflammation, we can test for that. But the testing, it's not going to be perfectly conclusive. It's only a snapshot of what's in the blood. And galectin 3 is actually, it's really sneaky because it can actually link together and hide in biofilms. So you could
Mm.
have a lower level of galectin 3 on your labs because it's bound together in a biofilm. And what a biofilm is, it's basically like the sticky byproduct of toxins and pathogens that form together and they adhere to tissues in your body and hide, which it's really crazy, but they can do this and then they can take over our immune system and they can cause inflammation. And so there's a lot of things that can happen in your body. Lab tests are a tool in the toolbox, but I think it's just as powerful, if not more, to look at symptoms, look at history, and really put together the pieces of a person's puzzle, which is their body and their health and wellness, kind of that way. So labs can be like, I think, one of the pieces of the puzzle that can like be helpful, but to me, it's not like an end all be all solution. We look at how you're feeling and like what's been going on and what caused you to like, come to me or, come here in the first place wanting to make changes.
Okay. So going back to the toxin side,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned detox, you mentioned protocols. So now somebody decides, hey, I want to work with you. And first of all, are you working with individuals or?
Yeah. Yep. I take
Yeah.
on
Okay.
some one-on-one clients, and we have group coaching, which is also nice because they get the accountability and the support of other people going
Right.
through it at the same time as them too.
Okay. So somebody enters that type of program. I'm just trying to understand what
Yeah.
detox looks like. Is this somebody like, are there supplements that get recommended? Is it unique for the individual? Are there different types of toxins that you're first trying to determine, like what is the problem? How does that process look?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I always start with a one-on-one game plan session with anybody, whether it's a group or one-on-one, because there is, like I said, there is an individualized component. There's a lot of things that everyone is going to walk through, including, working on reducing inflammation, clearing out toxins, um, the food aspect, keeping your blood sugar levels stable, like all of those types of things, everyone's going to be working on week after week. But I do start out, doing a one-on-one just to make sure for that person, we're individualizing everything. One of the biggest things that I have people do, when it comes to like, things that everyone is going to do that's going to help them. I try again. It depends on where people are at when it comes to supplements. If people are willing, I think there's a lot of supplements we can add in to see a lot of change quickly. And then other people are like, I just want to start with one or two and just focus on the food part and focus on lifestyle stuff, and then maybe add in things later. So it's going to kind of depend on what someone's willing to do. But there's a super fiber found in citrus fruits that can actually dissolve toxins. And you mentioned, like, do you look for certain types of toxins? The cool thing about, and it's called pectin, what it does is it can actually capture a bunch of toxins, whether it's heavy metals or other pathogens. So it doesn't really discriminate. It kind of like takes all of those together. So it can actually
Mm,
dissolve the toxin buildup and it can help heal inflammation. So, and like I said, it's a fiber called pectin. It's from citrus fruit peels. It's like lemons, limes, oranges, and it's really able to start binding and flushing out toxins from the body, which helps to also reduce inflammation. So, pectisol, that modified citrus pectin, that's really the only ingredient that's been shown in published research to regulate galectin 3 and help balance
mm,
out your body's inflammation response. So that's actually kind of one of the biggest things that I do right off the bat, because that's going to help prevent inflammation. It's going to help with easier weight loss, and it's a simple thing. It's a supplement you can take like one scoop of a day for weight loss is what I recommend. If someone has like a lot more inflammation or toxic buildup, we might do a scoop or a scoop and a half twice a day. But it's just like I look for like these simple things that don't require a lot of effort and
mm.
yield a lot of results. So
Yeah.
that's when I look at something like, an infrared sauna. Okay, if somebody already has one, let's work that into their detox program. But if they don't, and they're going to have to drive like 2 hours to go to one, and if it's something that's like too, it might not be necessarily. I mean, it's probably still worth it, but there might be other things that we're going to prioritize more so they can definitely start seeing better results right away. Because then when you start seeing results and feeling better, you're more willing to add more things in, and then we can work off of that momentum. So I think a few of the things that I do with clients right off the bat, like with everybody, I'm going to start them taking modified citrus pectin. I'm going to start them eating breakfast right away in the morning, focusing on protein, fat, and carbs. For a lot of people, that's going to be just an easy breakfast that's pretty quick. Is going to be eggs with a couple tablespoons of coconut oil or butter. So that's your fat. The protein is your eggs. And then maybe for carbs, throw in some spinach or some fruit on the side. And that's like a great PFC balanced breakfast to kind of get them started. And then, like I said, for most women, I'm having them set an alarm and eat every 3 to 4 hours, which can feel like a really big deal because most of them are used to like starving themselves and, not really being in tune with their hunger or full sensors. But it's
Mm.
really important to get your body to trust you again. It's important to balance our blood sugars. It's important to start revving up our metabolism again. And so it can kind of be scary at first because a lot of times they're eating not just more frequently, but sometimes more food in general than they were eating before. And it's shocking to them how they can lose weight and
Mm.
have more energy and feel so great when they're eating more often and higher quantity of foods than before. But I think it makes
So
sense, right? Because you're just fueling your metabolism. It's like putting gas in your car. If you don't put any gas in your car, it's probably not going to run very well, if at all.
it's
But then when you
funny
start
thing is
putting,
that, yeah, it
mhm,
does makes a lot of sense.
mhm,
And you're saying it at a time where the general narrative, if you ask anybody in health and wellness, is fasting, right? Everyone is saying don't eat, reduce your eating window.
yep,
And but I mean, you're speaking to outcomes. You're actually dealing with people who are getting better. So this is not a theory. This is practical. Like the
right.
evidence is there. So what do you say to all those people? Like, I just finished listening to every single podcast telling me I need to do intermittent fasting, and you're telling me to eat breakfast?
That's usually why they're here. So I'm
Yeah,
like, if you want to go back to doing all the things that aren't working for you, don't they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result?
yeah,
So you're here. So I always ask them right away, even before they start working with me, like, are you willing to do something different than you've done
yeah,
before? And
yeah,
they're usually almost always at a point where they're like, yes, of course. That's why I'm here. I'll do anything you tell me
yeah,
to do. So, and of course, maybe when I first started working with clients, it wasn't like that as much. But now that I have a decade and a half of experience and I've helped, so many people over the years, um, it works. And like, sure, I think there's a time and place for intermittent fasting. I think that the research shows that it works a little better for men than women. Women's hormones are
yeah,
more delicate. I think we all fast every day already for 8 to 10 hours at night.
yeah,
So with the women that and mostly work with women now. I still work with men, but it's definitely, most of my population is women these days. And what I've found to work is balancing their blood sugars, clearing out toxins, reducing inflammation, having them eat frequently throughout the day, at least to start. We get to a
yeah.
point where they don't have to set an alarm on their phone for the rest of their life every 3 hours, but to really get back in touch with their body and to heal their metabolism and to like really get them that momentum, that's where we start.
And some people fast for the longevity benefit that's everyone's talking about of the autophagy and clearing out a senescent cell. So if you want to go down this path, how do you make up for that and say like, well, this is one part of the equation. Thank you for helping me lose weight, but I also want to live forever.
I hear you. And also, when people are doing intermittent, like, so the thing is, a lot of the women that I help, they have done intermittent fasting. And what happens is it kind of like has backfired for them where they get so hungry that they start eating like all of the things that cause inflammation and that cause
Yeah,
toxin buildup. So there's like a risk reward or risk benefit. Like basically, if you do that and then you end up kind of going way off track. And a lot of times when that happens, that'll get someone stuck for not just like one meal or snack, but they'll be stuck then in that vicious cycle of craving things and causing inflammation. And it makes sense because when your blood sugars spike, they crash. And then when they crash is when you crave and then you eat, junk and things that spike them again. And so they ride that blood sugar roller coaster. And when they get stuck in that for days, and then maybe they intermittent fast, for however many hours, and then they get stuck again. Basically, what I'm helping them do is break that cycle and heal the inflammation and the damage that happened as a result. So I think there's just so much benefit in reducing inflammation and toxin overload because that's what can really set us up for chronic disease and so many other health issues. So I would say maybe it kind of like evens out. I don't know. I don't know the exact answer, but that would kind of be that's
no,
my
yeah,
approach.
it makes sense. There's multiple threats, and often, there's only so many things we can do, and we often pick one habit that maybe deals with one of the threats. But that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that there's no other solution, there's no other way to solve the problem.
Right.
Ultimately, I wanna have long, healthy years, and if you look at most people who have successfully aged to 100 plus, they typically aren't biohackers or, athletes, or they're nonna, it's a grandma who had good
Mhm.
relationships and walked around and made her pasta every day, and So there's something to be said about thinking about more than just one siloed approach. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's very eye opening because this we're in a time right now where that's that's all you can hear. You go anywhere and it's like, go fast. What's wrong with you? Why don't you fast? It's almost assumed that you do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we kind of get I feel like there's patterns like that in history, right? Where we get focused on like one or two things. And I mean, exercise is kind of a big one that I'm still having to, I like to call it unbrainwashing. I'm still kind of unbrainwashing. And I love exercise. Like I'm an avid exerciser. I used to be a marathon runner. I love an active lifestyle more so, I guess I would call it, than just like, hitting the gym all the time. But people get stuck in that. And the reality is over exercising can cause inflammation. And
Yeah.
I've seen this in so many clients where they're like, I'm hitting the gym every morning at 5 o'clock for this many hours. And I'm, doing that elliptical machine for, 90
Yeah.
minutes to whatever it is. And then, but they're not taking any breaks. And so, exercise causes inflammation, which is, and that's how your muscle fibers, you break down muscle fibers and then that's how you build muscle. It's how you build lean muscle. So it's not a bad thing. But when it's a bad thing is when every single day you're causing inflammation and your body's not getting a chance to heal it. So resting is just as important as, as exercising. And it can be one of those things that is a very big weight loss blocker that people would never think of because they're like, but wait, I just burned all these calories.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was marathon running, I would wonder how these people would be so there were people that were very, very heavy, not that didn't fit the standard profile of like what a marathon runner would look like. And I would think to myself, like, here they're burning all these calories, like thousands of calories in the training and the running in the races. And they're, and some people that run, they do it because they're wanting to lose weight. But then, I mean, I remember running with groups and people would talk about how they were gaining weight as they would
Mm.
prep for these races and it made no sense to them. And it's because they were, if you're stuck in the calories in, calories out mindset, which is what we've been told for years. So, of course, people are, that is very confusing. When you realize that all of that running and exercise without resting can cause inflammation in your body and inflammation can cause weight gain, then it makes sense. So, we always have to kind of look beyond what we're just told at face value. Even the word fat, like fat makes us fat seems to
Yeah.
make sense. Like it makes sense at face value, but there's a lot more to it. There's good fats and bad fats, and the good healthy
Yeah.
fats like coconut oil and olive oil and avocados are a real food. Like those are really good for you. Your brain is made up of over 70% fat. We need those. Now the damaged ones, the fake ones, margarine and Cool Whip and all those types of things, those are bad for you and those are going to cause inflammation. But when you don't have any fat at all, like that's not going to be good for your body and weight either. So I think there's just a lot of different extremes and things, and there's some truth probably in everything. But I think just looking at the big picture and really looking at all of the systems of your body and trying to work with all of them versus just kind of doing like, one or two more extreme things is important.
So one last thought for you, if you don't mind, which is you have this unique perspective where you're working with these people and you
Yeah.
get to see the outcome of your coaching and recommendations. So you know what's working and what's not working. So what is the sweet spot for exercise based on you're dealing with all these women? Is it like every second day? Is it like do 2, 3 days and take a break? Is it do your bro workout and split the body so that everything has a chance to rest? Like what's actually working?
I would say in general, and again in general, because everybody's a little bit different, I would say a few days a week of more of the high intensity interval training. And that's what I do. I do between two, sometimes four. That's my max. Two is like probably my minimum. Three is probably my sweet spot. Days of like the 30-minute higher intensity interval training. And then on the other days, I tell people go for a hike, walk. I like to surf. I'm here in California. Some people like to, if they're in Minnesota, where I'm from, they like to go skiing or ice skating
Yeah.
or like there's just being active is really important. And the benefits of walking are just mind blowing. I started having my clients wear these glucose monitors so we can actually see if they're in fat burning zone or
Mm.
not. And one of the biggest revelations we've had from those is that, your blood sugars, they do go up after you eat. Like they're going to go up a little bit. We don't want them spiking, but they're going to go up a little bit because you just ate food. If they go for a walk right after they eat, even if it's like a 5 to 10 minute walk, it actually will like even out their spike and bring them back
Mm.
down. So even if people are in office settings, I always, we're really finding that just taking like a really short walk after you eat can be so beneficial. And the blood sugar balance is important because that's how you feel good. But tying it back into weight loss, when your blood sugars are stable, that's really where you get the secretion of glucagon, your fat burning hormones. You can burn fat for energy. And that's what we want. We want to be taking in food, burning it for energy. And we want to be like in that constant, like energizer bunny state where we're not packing on pounds. We're not riding the blood sugar roller coaster where we crash and fall and we feel it. We feel tired and we feel exhausted and we reach for caffeine and sugar and then we spike again and then we crash again. We want to be out of that. We want to be stable. And then that's also what's going to benefit, our weight. It's what's going to reduce inflammation and prevent disease. So it's kind of a tangent, but
Yeah. Okay. No, got it. Essentially, what you're saying is move every day, like have an active
okay.
lifestyle, and
Mhm.
then that very purposeful, I go to the gym and do my thing is like 2 to 4 days a week, 3, 4 days
Yeah,
maybe, yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of
yeah,
sense because it's like, here's my, my supercharging by going to the gym and lifting weights or doing my HIIT or whatever,
yeah.
but it has to be paired with an active lifestyle, and that is not
Yes.
burdensome. We're meant to walk all day, right?
We're meant to move, and maybe you do, stretching or yoga on your non-intense days, and maybe you do wanna run a marathon. I have clients that they wanna do that. It's a bucket list goal of theirs, and there's a s there then if that's for a season then. But I
Yeah.
think what I'm really talking about is the chronic exercisers that every day in and day out or, they go from marathon to marathon to marathon, and their body's just never getting a chance to rest, and that's the biggest
Yeah.
thing, is we wanna just as much as we're focusing on pushing and, hitting it hard, like, not doing that all the time. It's important to rest and bring our stress levels down. That's going to reduce our cortisol. It's going to reduce inflammation. I think you're going to be a happier person if you're allowing your body times to actually rest and rejuvenate too.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome advice. I like, in fact, everything we talked about today, very practical and very human, let's say. As opposed to a lot of what we hear and talk about is this like thing you got to add and this heavy burden and this work you got to do, and it really feels like therapy. You're humanizing the whole thing and like just getting down to the real deal, like we're toxic and let's get rid of it and eat like this, exercise like this, in a way that's manageable and easy to do, which makes it stick. So I appreciate that about the work you do. So how do people, I know the book is out there, how do people find you otherwise?
Yeah, redefinedweightloss.com. That's where you can find more about my approach. There's a lot of free resources on there. I think there's a free guide on there that talks about 7 ways to heal inflammation, which we've been talking a lot about today. And yeah, I would say I want to just leave people with give yourself grace too, because this isn't an overnight thing and small
Yeah.
changes really can add up. So even if you just added in a couple of things we talked about today, I love that you said I'm like humanizing the process because my clients will tell me that. They'll say that they've seen other dietitians and they felt like failures and they felt like shameful because, they
Mm.
weren't seeing results and they were doing the work. They were cutting calories and exercising but the problem, was really more with the approach. So I always tell people there's nothing wrong with you. If you're stuck, it's just because you haven't been able to yet figure out what's holding you back. So,
Yeah.
don't give up. We're all humans just trying to figure out this thing, life together. And, we're not meant to isolate and do things alone. So absolutely, if anybody, has anything that they have questions about, they can feel free to reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to be supportive. Thanks for having me on.
Amazing.
This was a great
No,
conversation.
thank you for coming. People needed to hear this, so it was a pleasure. Thank you for making the time, and everybody grab the book, take a read. You're gonna learn a lot, and reach out if you need more support.
Thanks, Kashif.